B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh V'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're continuing our series of the Iggeret HaGra, B'ezrat Hashem, the letter that the Gaon of Vilna wrote to his family, thereby us, Baruch Hashem, that we can learn and toil in week after week, each week, going over a few more lines of this extraordinary letter and trying to use the tools that he provided us on a silver platter to perfect our life, B'ezrat Hashem. Tonight's shiur will be for a refuah shlema for Yaakov Issachar ben Ruth and Zechariah Yona ben Ruth, also for Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Hope Hunter bat Liora, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, David ben Nesriya, Doris bat Jora, Orit bat Ilana, Yitro ben Avraham, Talia bat Sarah, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha bat Julie, Ayla bat Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Cephas ben Marsha, Alexander ben Marsha, Louis ben Marsha, Shaul ben Farzane, Reuven Chaim ben Parel, Yitro ben Avraham, David ben Nesriya, Oshri ben Doris, Gabi ben Doris, Elad ben Doris, Netanel Yosef ben Avraham, and Amir ben Shahin. הקדוש ברוך הוא יברך אותם בכל מכל כל, חיים ארוכים, שלמים, מלאים תורה, מצוות, גמילות חסדים, נחת וברכה, בכל מעשי ידיהם. To them and to all of the other wonderful people that continue to contribute, continue to learn Torah with us, all of the new people, Baruch Hashem, that I've been hearing from, that Kadosh Baruch Hu continue to give them koach. This is some of the things B'ezrat Hashem will talk about today as far as the journey of the winner. The journey of the winner is not an easy journey. In fact, it's a very difficult one. It's full of struggles. In any aspect in life, whether you're journeying for the fulfilling the purpose of life and serving Hashem to the maximum, or you are serving some other type of thing in life that is not Hashem. But nonetheless, even if it's permissible, such as you're looking to be successful in something, successful in your business, successful in your career of some kind, in your scholarship, in your marriage, in your parenthood, everything in sports, whatever it is that you're trying to do, it's to be a winner requires struggle, but not just ordinary struggle, rather above and beyond the ordinary struggle. And it's actually the struggle that's the reason that most people are not winners, because most people are not willing to struggle as much as the winner is. But the beautiful part of Torah is that the struggle is not necessarily a something that you're always going to experience, especially since the boss helps you from time to time to overcome the struggle that he actually gave you. So, of course, we'll try to go into that. We'll try to get a little bit of better clarity of if there is an easier time overcoming the struggle in the diaspora, in America, in London, in Australia, or versus in Israel. Whether there is a easier time to overcome a struggle when you're single versus when you're married, when you don't have kids versus when you do have kids. You know, there's a lot of illusions that people have. Oh, I see that the app is down. 1 second, guys. Let me see if I could get this thing back up since we just started. So it's the struggle is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing for anybody, and unfortunately, it's the struggle that makes most people decide. Much bigger decisions than they can usually um, really put value into. Meaning that sometimes a person just decides to give up because of the struggle without realizing the ramifications, the domino effect that it leads to, like we discussed in our Chazon Ish lecture on Sunday night. So, a few things before we get into it. A couple of things coming up for everybody to look out to. First, for all of those that are Hebrew speakers, I would highly recommend signing up, if you haven't already, to our WhatsApp groups or in our email newsletter, because we just started this year a very new thing where you'll have a weekly write-up by me in Hebrew about the weekly parasha, different chidushim that I've discussed and put in writing, B'ezrat Hashem. So that's new. We started Parashat Bereshit last week. Baruch Hashem got some good feedback out of it. And this week we just sent out yesterday Parashat Noach. So for anybody that's a Hebrew speaker, this is something to look out for. Second thing is we have received the delivery of the new cards with the containers. Baruch Hashem, it's in our distribution center. So B'ezrat Hashem, over the next couple of days, we're going to start another one of the campaigns to give it out for free. Even though it costs a ton of money. We really don't have the time to waste at this point. We need people to do tshuva, especially now that it's a new year. So we're going to start a campaign for any of you that want to give these cards out in your communities. And again, this is obviously for anybody that wants to contribute towards that cause. Of course, there's going to be a huge cost, whether it's the cards already. They all come in a very nice plastic container that itself was a few dollars. So that container, and then you have the cards are made from plastic. Very cool thing. You can put them on display without thinking much. Just simply take the container with the cards already in it, put it somewhere, leave, and you could literally give it out to 50, 60 places in one day, and you've done yourself a big service for your Olam Haba. We're going to be giving out these for free, but obviously it's limited amounts per person because we want to distribute it everywhere. Now, initially, it's going to be only free for those of you that are in the U.S., and for a limited amount. We're not going to give you an endless amount. Don't ask me for 50,000 cards. It's we're going to give you a few hundred per person at most. And that's one thing. Second thing is we have also some of the books, the family purity books that we published recently by Rabbanit Shulamit Kachlon, the Balanit, for over 40 years. We have some of those. We started distributing already. Anyone that lives in a community of Hebrew speakers, especially Israelis that get the point. Secular, religious, doesn't necessarily matter so much. This book is specifically for the ladies. Anyone that wants to get, some of these books in their hands, they're also going to be free for those of you that want. And again, each one is going to be limited quantities. It's not going to be unlimited. Don't ask me for 5,000 books. Probably going to be 10, 15 books per person at most. They cost a lot of money. And at the same token, we want to distribute them to as many places as possible in the U.S. We've already given out several thousand of them in Eretz Yisrael. We have a few to give out here in the States for anyone that wants. First come, first serve. Second, the other thing is we're working on a few big projects. B'ezrat Hashem will have a couple of big movies coming out very soon. For the first time ever, we're going to have a movie in both Hebrew and in English at the same time, but they're not with subtitles, but the actual vocals are going to be, it's Hebrew and English. That's almost ready. And Bezrat Hashem shall be a big success. A couple of other interesting projects we have, Baruch Hashem. Of course, for those of you that want to continue helping us in all these things, be'ezrathashem.org is the website, or you can go to tikkunabrit.org, tikkunabrit.live, bhyeshiva.org. There's a lot of Baruch Hashem websites, and we also have a major thing coming up, which is going to be literally in the coming days. A brand new website for our Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters. Brand new website, fantastic, beautiful website. That's also going to be announced over this next couple of days. I mean, technically I just announced it, but you'll find out the website very soon, probably within a matter of the next 2, 3, 4 days or so. We'll make a press release about that. So we have, Baruch Hashem, a growing fan base that's our native Spanish speakers from all over the world. And Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us some tzaddikim on our team that have both the knowledge and the skill to build a site for them with a bunch of different videos there and all types of wonderful things. So that's also coming up. For those of you that want to continue supporting our kollel, our Dayanut kollel continues to go. We actually just hired another new avrech, Baruch Hashem, another tzaddik. He's added to the team, and Baruch Hashem will have some new shiurim coming from him as well. For any of you that have been watching the shiurim, you could see them on our Be'ezrat Hashem YouTube channel. We have my channel, we have Rav Ephraim's channel, we have Rav Chaim's channel. We have the different languages channels, and we also have a channel that's called Be'ezrat Hashem. And over there is where we put Rabbi Leib's lectures, which he talks about Ilchot Shabbat, Ilchot Lashon Hara, all types of wonderful things that for anybody that wants to actually join that class live, to be part of that chavruta, you could contact me. And I could see what I can do. Perhaps maybe I can have you join that class. Aside from that, we also have our Avrechim in Eretz Yisrael. They're coming out with new shiurim each week. They're all in Hebrew, but those that are watching it obviously enjoy it. Rabbi Leib's shiurim are in English. Highly recommend people watch it. It's a lot of different things that I don't discuss. Specifics of laws, of Shabbat, of Lashon Hara, some interesting things in regards to Musar. Baruch Hashem, it's have a nice tone to it, and a lot of good insights from Rabbi Leib. And Baruch Hashem, lots of other things. But we have a lot of other things, but that's going to take up all of our time. We're already 15 minutes in. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Let's get into the shiur. We have tomorrow also to talk about some other updates, some other things going on. But again, if anyone that wants to sponsor an avrech for a week, for a month, wants to do anything in regards to contributions, you could simply donate on the website. We have several different possibilities. You could donate on the Facebook link, on the app. There's a lot of different ways for you to part ways with the money you worked hard for, in order for that money to work hard for you, Be'ezrat Hashem. So now we haven't talked about the Gaon of Vilna in quite some time. And we have to do a little bit of a recap of what the Gaon has done for us, what kind of journey he's taken us on over the last several months. Initially, the Gaon of Vilna simply reminded us that we simply don't know anything about anything by showing us how much Torah is in a letter of a Talmid Chacham. Meaning, when the average person writes a text message to his friend, to his parent, to his spouse, what do they say? Most of the time, the stuff that they share is, nothing that anybody else could learn from. Perhaps it's important to you, it's important to him, it's important to her, it's important to the people that are corresponding with each other. But if anybody else, if there was a fly on the wall reading your text messages, more times than not, there's nothing of value for anybody to learn from that message. Needless to say, same thing with emails, same thing with the spam that people continue sending about different conspiracies and craziness that's out there. There's a new one every other day, whether it's the corona and the vaccine, or it's all types of other governmental issues. There's an endless spam department in the world that continues to grow. I wish the people that spend all of their time spamming everybody that they know would just simply use that time to help people do tshuva and send them real shiurei Torah. But unfortunately, even when they do send shiurei Torah, you don't even want to watch it because it's surrounded with so much spam that they add to it and they pretty much already tell you what to think. So, if people simply, watched your average message out there, there's really not much to learn. The Gaon of Vilna showed us that the mind of a Gaon, the mind of a Talmid Chacham, works very different. Where the Gemara says that even the idle conversation, simple conversation between one Chacham and another, needs to be studied. Needless to say, this is what countless Jews have been doing for the last couple of 100 years with the letter that the Gaon of Vilna wrote to his wife and kids. This is a letter that endless amount of people have studied, have written books about, commentary about, and it wasn't supposed to be that. It's not like the Gaon of Vilna was thinking, I'm going to write a letter, and 200 years from now there's going to be some guy that's going to make a whole series of lectures about it, teaching the whole world how to think. That was not necessarily part of the plan of the Gaon. Perhaps it was. He was a Gaon nonetheless, but the point being is that he was simply writing a letter to his wife. The fact that every word that comes out of his mouth is 100% Torah, is 100% emet, it's 100% something you can learn from, that's in essence was symbolic of a Talmid Chacham. This is why I tell people all the time that if you're going to be reading books of people, watching lectures, listening to lectures, make sure you're not going to listen to somebody just because they're entertainment value, just because they make you laugh, just because they tell you, updates about the news. Make sure that you're learning something that you can apply to your life. How do you know if you're learning something? Simple. If your life is changing. If your life is changing and you're becoming a better person, then you can continue reading that book and watching those lectures and so on. But if all you see yourself is that all you're doing is staying exactly the same, nothing is really changing, then obviously change the channel. This is one of the things that people for some reason never figure out for themselves, because the Satan, one of the jobs that he has is to make you pleasantly numb. And he gives you some type of channel, some type of speaker that is just going to numb your soul to the point where you don't even realize that it's still alive. So the Gaon of Vilna already taught us from the beginning about how much wisdom you can include in a single letter. That in itself is extraordinary. And after that, he started discussing the importance of raising children in a specific way, the boys in a specific way, the girls in a specific way, to teach them musar, to teach them, to develop their character traits, to make sure to send them to the right place, to make sure that they're surrounded by the right people, to make sure we don't expose ourselves to danger, because just like the Gemara in Masechet Bava Metzia says, if a person has to go to a certain place, and he has two ways to go to it. One way is the shorter way, but it's full of immodesty. The other way is much, much longer, but the coast is clear. The Gemara says, even if he closes his eyes the whole way and goes in a shorter path, closing his eyes, he doesn't look at any immodesty. Although today people would say, wow, that's a tzaddik. That guy went to the entire Fifth Avenue. He went through all of Broadway. He went through all of Tel Aviv. He went through all of Gaon, and he didn't even look. What a tzaddik that guy is. That's not the opinion of the Gemara. Gemara says, Rashahu. He's a wicked person. Why is he a wicked person? How did you have so much arrogance to think that you're not going to sin? Why would you put yourself at such danger? Don't you care about your soul? Point being is that a person has to be careful with the soul, not just when the sin is in front of him and he has to look away. Even before he gets there, hence the reason why the Gaon of Vilna tells his wife, don't leave the house unless it's absolutely necessary. Go send somebody to the stores even if it costs double. Don't go to synagogue because it's full of Lashon Hara. There's no need for a woman to go to synagogue ever. Simply pray at home. If you're a guy, you'll pray with the minyan. As long as it's a kosher synagogue, there's kosher people there. There's at least a kosher minyan, and they're not talking during prayer. There's a kosher mechitza. It follows all the laws. Go pray there. Baruch Hashem, it's great. But if your synagogue, wherever you are, doesn't have a kosher mechitza, don't go. If everybody's talking there and you can't even hear yourself praying, don't go there. If the rabbi is an apikoros, and so is most of the kehillah, don't go there. Now, of course, going and praying with the minyan is a very big deal. But remember, with a minyan is a big deal. If everybody's an apikoros, a heretic, a baal lashon hara, full of rechilut, they're in essence coming to the synagogue just to socialize, that's not a minyan. That's a moshav letzim. It's a place of clowns. So again, you have to know, today it's not so simple. It's not so simple to say, oh yeah, I go to synagogue all the time, because sometimes people go to synagogue, but they become worse for it. So you have to be careful wherever you go, because sometimes you can go to certain places and it'll make you worse. Same thing with Shulei Torah. There are certain organizations out there, I won't even mention any names, where they make it their point only to publicize the speakers that are the ones that are going to speak the softest, market the organization to help them with money issues, speak greatly about the organization, how great they are, even though there's nothing great about them, and simply tell people what they want to hear. You ask them, well, how come you don't have any of the speakers that you're highlighting in your Tisha B'Av events, in your Hoshana Rabbah events, in any of your events? How come you don't have any speaker talk about simple reward and punishment? Why is everybody talking about just basic things that it's not really waking up anyone? Why don't you have any strong speakers? What are they going to tell you? No, the crowd, they don't really want that anymore. That's not for this generation. Babkis. And this is what I tell people that keep telling me the same thing. Listen, I sent your lectures to a few people, and some people gave me bad feedback. They said, don't send it to me. They said, this guy's too hard. What do I tell them? Keep sending it. Keep sending it. Why keep sending it? Because you're doing people a favor by sending the emet to them. Some people, Rabotai Karim, they see the light and they run to it. They run to the light. Why? They know the light is where there's good. Some people, they run away from the light. Why? Because they're comfortable in their darkness. Because the darkness is simply a place where it allows them to do all of the hidden sins, all of the garbage, and they think no one is watching, even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees everything from them. And they want to stay in darkness. So when you send them some light, some truth, they run away from it. But don't be discouraged. Go keep sending the light, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the light. What's the proof? Look at the track record that we have over these last 7 years or so of giving lectures. In a very, very short fashion, HaKadosh Baruch Hu literally has made our organization, Be'ezrat Hashem, one of the most popular organizations in the Jewish world. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just simply trying to do the best that I can and have Hashem use me as a vessel. Rabbi Ephraim is doing the same exact thing, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has helped us feed over 25,000 people in the last year in Eretz Yisrael. Open a kollel, open a girls' seminary with almost 400 girls. The amount of lectures that are out there is unbelievable. Over 20 million minutes per month are being watched of our lectures. Over 20 million minutes per month. This, Rabotai Karim, is challenging any of the biggest organizations out there, and we're only a couple of people. In so many words, as they say in the sports world, lehavdil, pound for pound, we're the most popular rabbis on planet Earth. That's just the reality of things. Now, does that mean that just because somebody's the most popular, they are the best? No, sometimes the most popular are the wicked people. But here you see that people are looking for the truth. Jews, Gentiles, young people, old people, Baalei Tshuva, from birth, a whole group of Hasidim from all over the world. Hasidei Satmar, Hasidei Gur, Vishnitz, all of the different types of Hasidut contact me constantly, thanking me for the lectures. There's an endless amount of Baalei Tshuva coming every single week from all walks of life. From New York, from Australia, from California, from different parts of South America, even from Abu Dhabi, Dubai. Literally, people from all over the world are looking for the truth and they're finding it. So even though there's going to be some people that are running away from that light, you keep going, you keep doing. Why? Because eventually you'll find a few people that are going to say, you saved my life. You saved my life. And the Gaon of Vilna, when he wrote this letter, he didn't skip the truth. The whole thing is truth, meaning that even when he was talking to his tzadikah wife, he still mentioned to her some scary things about Kaf HaKela. Kaf HaKela, a horrible, horrific place where, in so many words, it's pure revenge. Because there's really nothing being fixed there. It's just pure revenge against a wicked soul that went against the Creator. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes this person. The Gaon of Vilna says if a person wastes their words, they can even go to Kaf HaKela. And who's he telling this to? He's not telling this to some secular person. He's telling this to his wife, meaning that a person needs to know that no matter where you are, whether you're new in the tshuva world, you just started keeping Shabbat, you just started becoming modest, or you're from birth, the Gaon of Vilna has something to say to you. What is it? It's time to do tshuva. What do you mean? But I'm already frum, Rabbi. Well, the Gaon of Vilna's wife was also frum, and she still heard about Kaf HaKela. She still heard about Kaf HaKela. In the book about the life of Rav Steinemann, alav shalom, in a sefer, it says all types of questions that they ask Rav Steinemann, and they write the answers. One of the famous, well-known Kiruv rabbis at the time comes to Rav Steinemann and says to him, for the Rav, I speak to all types of people. Sometimes I have lectures for kids, little kids, 10, 11, 8, 9-year-olds, sometimes teenagers, sometimes adults. Should I change something? Meaning that, should I tell them about Genom with all the details about it? Rav Steinemann says to him, absolutely tell them about Genom. He says, I don't understand why people are scared to talk about Gehenom. In the past, he said, people were scared of Gehenom. Today, people are scared to talk about Gehenom. It's the most bizarre thing in the world. Of course, you have to tell them about Gehenom and all the details. Why? When a person knows the consequences of their actions, they reevaluate things before they do them. And that's in essence what the Gaon of Vilna is telling his own frum tzadikah, Kdosha, wife and children. No matter where you are, it's time to do tshuva. It's time to work on yourself. It's time to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now that we continue, the Gaon of Vilna continues this letter, and he goes back to the aspect of chinuch. Goes back to the aspect, to the topic of chinuch, where he says to his wife, "Ubevakasha lekulchem, על הנכתב לעיל שתדריכי בנייך ובנותייך בדברים רכים, בדברי מוסר המתיישב על הלב, ובפרט אם נזכה לבוא לארץ ישראל, כי שם צריך ללך מאוד בדרכי השם." I reiterate, the Gaon says, I reiterate my request that you guide your sons and daughters primarily with soft words, words of musar that will find a place in their heart. And especially if we merit to arrive in Eretz Israel, because it is imperative that one follows Hashem's ways there. This is the first section we'll discuss. The Gaon goes back and reiterates a plea to his dear wife, that surely loves the children no less than he does. And he asks her again, please guide our sons and daughters with soft words, with words of musar that will find a place in their hearts. To some people who do not know what musar really is, this is an oxymoron. What do you mean, soft words, words of musar? Isn't that a contradiction? If it's musar, it has to be about punishment, horrible, you're the worst, and if it's soft, then, everybody's going to heaven, everybody's great. No, that's absolutely not it. That's what the wicked people would tell you. Like somebody told me at Motzei Shabbat, he went to some community and here in Florida, and he cried foul, sending me a message on Motzei Shabbat saying, Rabbi, you have to talk about this, about such and such rabbi. I said, nobody knows who this person is, so I'm not going to mention his name and make him popular, but I'll still mention the topic. Where he says, this rabbi caters to young crowds, and he wanted to make sure that all of these young people, most of which are desecrating Shabbat, most of which are wasting seed, promiscuous, eat pig, keep nothing, and so on, he decides to give a lecture this Shabbat. He says, and I was there visiting, came from New York, went to visit. I knew there's some friends of mine there. I went to go. And I'm listening to this guy telling these young people that anybody that tells you that Gaon is a bad place is a crazy person. It's only a year anyway, and it's not a bad place. And by the way, the Adam HaRishon was a loser, and Noach was a drunk, and he just simply spends an hour insulting the Torah and everything in it, desecrating it in every aspect. Why? He wants the people to laugh. He wants the people to think he's a funny guy. He's a friendly guy. He wants to get the attention. And of course, I don't need to tell you what kind of Gehenom, Kafa Kela, Chibuta Kever, and everything in between that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give this person just for that day, needless to say, for all the other garbage that he says probably every day. But unfortunately, Rabotai Karim, what people don't understand when they speak against Musar, what they typically do is they tell you, listen, don't listen to Musar because Musar is hard, talks about punishment, it's crazy people, it's this, it's that. But that's obviously very far from the truth. Anyone that actually spent time learning Musar, either from our lectures or from books or a combination thereof, knows that Musar is literally the greatest gift that a person can give themselves, because little by little you learn how to refine your soul. Sometimes refining your soul requires a sweet word. Sometimes refining your soul requires a nice bang. Either way, you need to refine it, and it's simply a free way to perfect yourself without having to pay anybody $300, $400, $500 an hour, without having to even tell anybody you're doing it. But unfortunately, Rabotai, the people that never learn Musar like to speak against it. So how could Musar, on one hand, talk about Gehenom? On the other hand, the Gaon of Vilna says, say soft words, because there's different ways of discussing Musar. I read, and we published it in our newsletter this week, fantastic write-up that was written about the Gaon Tzaddik, Rav Nisim Yagen, Alav Shalom. And the story, one of the many stories in there, is mamash the perfect diamond that gives you the idea. Now, anyone that ever listened to Rav Yagen's lectures, even if you don't speak Hebrew, if you simply listen to him talk, automatically you become scared. His voice was so commanding, was so powerful, immediately you just want to do tshuva. You're not really sure for what, you just want to do tshuva. His voice was just literally like Moshe Rabbeinu speaking from Mount Sinai. Unbelievable. And I'm a speaker for over 20 years. I can tell you one thing I do know about. I don't know a lot of things. But as far as speakers, who's a good speaker, who's not, who's a commanding speaker, who's not, it's one thing I do know. And I can appreciate great speakers. And Rav Yagen is the best of the best. You don't even need to know the language to get impacted by it. That's how great it is. And he spoke literally diamonds after diamonds, full of chidushim. He was an extraordinary Talmid Chacham. And he would scare you, as his nephew says. He would scare you into Gehenom during the lecture while making you laugh on the way out. All in the same lecture. Unbelievable. Now, anyone that hasn't had the privilege of listening to his lectures, but rather bought his books. You went to BezratHashem.org and bought the books, or you went somewhere else that sells the books and you bought them and you gave yourself a gift of a lifetime. Those books were done in such an amazing way. I wish that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will merit us to have such a thing work for us on our lecture, where somebody would literally put those lectures that we've done over the years in such a perfect way into writing. They did such a job that you see that the family members that worked on his books, it was a labor of love, not a labor of money, not a labor for anything else. Because anyone that understands books and things like that, you see how they took his words and they perfected it as far as how you write versus how you speak. And I've listened to the lectures, I've read the books, I know what's this and what's that, and it's still just as amazing. So when someone reads those books and you hear the stories that he talks about his own personal life, the things he sees, the things he saw, experiences, things like that, different chidushim about the Torah, so immediately it has an impact on you. It has an impact on you. And many times the impact is coming from a place where you're scared not to follow. An impact is coming from a place where you don't want to not follow. The impact is coming from a place where you simply want to do it because you want to be part of this winning team. So Rabbi again would talk about Gehenom, we'll talk about punishment, we'll talk about Emunah, Bitachon, talk about everything, the whole Torah. And he was a Ilui, he was a genius. He could have easily become the Rishon LeZion, the Gedol Hador, but he chose to do Kiruv instead because he knew that he had to save his brothers and sisters. Now, Rabbi again, that was every lecture of his, every page in his books is full of fire and brimstone, didn't only use fire and brimstone. Because as one of the stories in that write-up said, the way he would treat different people was based on a circumstance. Where if he saw that one of the Avrechim that was in his kollel had a dirty jacket, of course, someone that's a Ben Torah walks around with dirty clothes, it's Chilul Hashem. Now you could easily say, what? Chilul Hashem, yell at him. How dare you, being an Avrech, a Ben Torah, walking around like a schlep? How could you do it? It's the desecration of Hashem's name. Your Torah is worth nothing. And you'd be wrong for doing such a thing. And you'll get punished for such a thing. And it won't work, what you would do. Or you could do what Rabbi again did. He would see the Avrech, see that there's a dirty jacket, and tell the Avrech, can I see your jacket? Can I see for your jacket? I want to show somebody the color, because I want to get the same thing. The Avrech wouldn't think much of it, take off the jacket, give it to Rabbi again, and go back to learning. Rabbi again quickly had it taken to the dry cleaner, had it dry cleaned, and returned him the jacket. Perfectly clean. That was the Musar. That was the Musar that he would give that particular Avrech. Now, of course, that Avrech, when he got the jacket, would realize that he just got the jacket cleaned, which means that it was dirty, which means that it really wasn't about the color, but rather it was about doing something else. But the lesson was a lesson of a lifetime. A lesson of a lifetime. Another time he would see an Avrech walking around with shoes that were like a hippopotamus. They opened their mouth without an end. He'd ask the Avrech, do you have Shabbat shoes? Avrech says, sure. Most Bnei Torah, they have Shabbat shoes that they only wear on Shabbat, and they have shoes for the rest of the week. And usually the Shabbat shoes are pristine, are beautiful, and the rest of the week, sometimes they are not so much. They're not, if you don't have money to buy a new one, you don't have money to buy a new one. See, Avrech, can you do me a favor? Can you go and get your Shabbat shoes? I want to see them. Avrech would go, get the shoes, says, you know what, put those on. Wear those. Avrech would go and wear those. Rabbi again would go send those shoes to get them fixed. and returned to him. He goes, here you go. Now your shoes are fixed. Now you have the Shabbat shoes. Go back to be Shabbat shoes. Now your shoes are fixed. Shoes are fixed. He wouldn't yell at them and scream at them. But at the same token, if you listen to the lectures, he's yelling and screaming. So what gives? What the Gaon of Vilna is trying to tell his wife, in essence, trying to tell us, if you want to guide your children, you have to know what the sages teach. One hand pushes while the other hand pulls. One hand, you give the musal, that is tough. You didn't do the right thing. In fact, you did wrong. And sometimes when the opportunity allows and it's really a situation where you don't have another choice, you have to talk about tough things, punishments. But don't just talk about that. You have to pull back in. Talk about emunah. Talk about bitachon. Talk about how Hashem does love those that serve Him. And even those that don't, He still waits for them. And the key is to know that you have to pull and push at the same time. You can't just do one or the other. Unfortunately, Rabotai, what's happened is that there is a teachings that Shlomo Melech says. He says, teach a youngster the way he is, meaning the way he accepts things. Sometimes you have to teach certain kid one way, another kid a different way. Rav Steiderman, Alav Shalom, said, in the old days, the way people understood it is that, yeah, of course, you sometimes have to say a few jokes in order to open up the shiur, in order to get people to become more receptive to the real musar that you have to give them. You have to, and sometimes there are serious people. You don't have to tell them a joke. Go straight to business. He says what's happened today is that people just start with the joke and only say jokes. And only say jokes. And only say jokes. Where even if the person wants to be serious, they won't even allow him. They won't even allow him to be serious. They won't even allow him to grow. They just keep him, no, you don't need to do anything. You're perfectly fine as you are. God needs you. You don't need Him. All types of heretical teachings. And unfortunately, Rabotai, this is one of the things that is one of the greatest distortions of Torah teachings that's been happening over the last generation. Where you have people say, yeah, but aren't you supposed to teach people the way that they accept Torah? That's only to get them to become receptive. But the end goal is always to teach the truth. It's always to teach the truth. And the Gaon of Vilna says, guide our sons and daughters. Guide them with soft words. Words of musar that would find a place in their heart. Meaning, know that at times you have to be the one that just teaches the musar without saying a single word. Without saying a single word. Sometimes just showing them love. Sometimes mentioning something. Like Rabbi Avigdor Miller said years ago, and it was actually published recently in one of his Torah Avigdor newsletter, where how does a wife get her husband to learn Torah? She knows that every time she tells her husband, honey, why don't you go to a shiur? Honey, why don't you go learn some Gemara? Honey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? She knows every time she says it, he gets annoyed, it starts fighting, yelling, screaming, and he's not receptive at the end anyway. But she knows that the Gemara says that the only way she's going to go to Olam Haba is if she continues working on him and making sure that he and the kids go and learn Torah. So she can't just give up. So what do? You don't want to fight. You don't want problems with Shlom Bayit, but at the same token, you don't want to live a fake life where you pretend that there's Shlom Bayit, but your husband in reality doesn't learn a single page of Torah. So what do? Rav Avigdor Miller says simple. Use your brain. Don't tell him to go learn Torah if you know that he's going to respond that way. What do you say? Next time you see him wasting his life, reading the newspaper, watching TV, whatever it is that he's doing, Just say passively, that neighbor of ours, he's such a nice man. Heard he goes and learns Torah each night. Psh, what a nice man. And end it with that. Just walk away after that. Don't continue the conversation, meaning just sit there quietly after that. Let those few words simmer in his mind. Like good sauce needs to stay for a little while. You need to preserve it for a little while. Sometimes you need to wait for it to really give you the flavor. Same thing with good musar. You just drop a little bomb, but not about him, honey, go learn. Just, wow, what a nice man. I heard he goes to the shiur. Heard he goes to the shiur every night. Psh, what a nice man. And that's it. That's it. Oh, you heard the such and such kids down the street. They're really doing well in yeshiva, Baruch Hashem. I think it's probably because they learn with the father all the time. Such a good idea. That's it. Honey, what do you want to eat? Like, let that simmer for a little bit. Why? Because every normal husband hears that and says, wait a minute. I want to be that nice guy. I want to be with the successful kids. I want it. And especially since she didn't tell me I need to do it, but she just said that she's admiring it. I want her to admire me. Who doesn't want his wife to admire him? Who doesn't want it? Avigdor Miller says, that's it. That's the silent bomb that you can help him with. You can help him. Even more so. You see him go to a shiur. You see him do something that is good in the eyes of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Go and celebrate it. Compliment him above and beyond the norm. Make a big deal out of it. Wow, honey, Chazaku Baruch, what a great story. Wow, Chazaku Baruch, what a nice chidush about the parasha. Amazing. You know, some wives, Rabotai, they are the husband assassins. I've met some of them. They're the husband assassins. Why? They hear shiur Torah, and they hear a good speaker, and they like the way the rabbi speaks, the rabbinite speaks, and then their husband comes back from some shiur Torah that he went to or he listened to, and he says, honey, let me tell you this thing I heard today in a shiur. And he starts telling us a story, or he read it somewhere, and it doesn't really quite sound the same way as the rabbi said it, or as the book wrote it. So what does this assassin do? She tells him, no, that's not the way the story goes. That's not the way the story goes. No, you don't know how to tell stories. No, that's not what he meant. And she simply destroys all of his confidence. And before you know it, not only does his husband not want to share Torah with her, but the Torah becomes like a sword in the house. Torah becomes like a atomic bomb in the house. Why? She did it. Instead of encouraging her husband, telling him, wow, great story. In reality, the story was a world away from the way it really is versus the way your husband said it or the way your kid said it. But what do you care? What are you, a rating agency? Just the fact that they're learning Torah alone is a miracle. Support them. Tell them good job. Great story. You have a talent. I think you continue learning and be a Talmid Chacham. Support them. Don't be an assassin. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that they're assassins. And who do they assassinate? They assassinate their husband. They assassinate their wives. They assassinate their children. Why? Because they want their husband and children to be like the guy on YouTube, like the guy that they watch, like the Rabbanit. There's nothing stupider than that. Rabotai, remember, if your husband and kids, your wife, everybody in the family is learning Torah, is doing mitzvot, that's already amazing. That's already a miracle. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need everybody to be expert speakers and expert scholars. It's great to have it, but celebrate enough with the gift that you already have and continue supporting it. Don't be an assassin, a demotivator. And unfortunately, that happens sometimes. People don't even realize that they're the reason why that bachur doesn't want to learn yeshiva anymore. I'll tell you a real story, miraculous story. But the story starts horrific. Years ago, was a young man, young boy in Eretz Yisrael. Came from a religious family, 13 brothers and sisters, and went to yeshiva. Now, he was a relatively good student, but once in a while, he had his own independent thoughts, he had his own independent ideas, just like any other human being, and he wasn't always going with the flow, where once in a while he didn't want to necessarily wear the shoes that everybody else wore, or the pants that everybody else wore. He wouldn't necessarily do something that's against the yeshiva policy, but he was a little bit different. He wasn't a robot. When he was 14 years old, this young kid goes to yeshiva, goes to learn, he's a decent student, and the so-called rabbi, the Rosh Yeshiva, gives a speech. What speech? 1 hour. He talks about, to the whole class, full of boys, don't be like him. For 1 hour, he murders this 14-year-old kid. How? Don't be like him. Don't be like him. You could be great. You could be better. You could be this. You could be that. For an hour, he's murdering this kid. Surely this Erev Rav has no share of the world to come. But what happened to that boy? You know what happened to that boy? After endless amount of tears, a broken heart, and a broken soul, that boy left the Torah, left the mitzvot, to the point where he hated the Torah. He became allergic to anything that has to do with Judaism, anything that has to do with the religious part of the family. Hated it with a passion. Ran away from it. And even though some of his family members were very serious people when it comes to Torah and mitzvot, he would run away from them. Several years ago, Rav Ephraim came to him and tried to help him do tshuva. This young man ran away. I don't want to hear it. Started laughing at Rav Ephraim. Nothing. Zero. Hates it. Traveled, went to different countries like they usually do after the army. Worked, made some money, girls, this, that. Decided to go to Australia with some girl. Go do whatever you want. Live completely free. Free from responsibility, free from reporting to anyone. And don't you dare mention a word of Torah. Why? He saw what the bad version of Torah can do. Now, Rabotai Yekarim, a person like this has religious family members, has good people around him. They tell him, listen, this rabbi, he's not a real rabbi, he's an Erev Rab, he's a Rasha, I don't know why he did what he did, it's mamash Maaseh Satan. Why do you go against Hashem just because of one bad Jew, one bad rabbi? Nothing worked. For years he hated it, became allergic to it. A little over a year ago, I met this man, I met this young boy, and when I met him, I tried talking to him for a little bit. He smiled at me, said, oh yeah, and this, that, but nothing. About a year ago, we decided to have a special project. What project? Select a few young people and tell them, if you learn the Shas, certain Seder every day, certain amount of pages every day, you complete the Shas in 1 year. And of course, to tell us, great, some people don't complete it in an entire lifetime, and not only do you want me to complete it in a year, but maybe your eyes are not working, but I'm not even religious. I don't keep anything. I don't keep Shabbat. I don't keep nothing. You want me to do it? We said, yes. We want you to do it. We want you to finish the Shas in 1 year. And if you do, we have somebody that's going to sponsor $10,000. And you get a party at the end. Now you talk to a young man with money, maybe it's not so bad after all. We had a bunch of guys sign up, about 15 people sign up. Out of those 15 people, most of them tried, but they couldn't do it. Their job got in the way, this got in the way, but everybody was impacted in a positive way. In a few weeks from now, we're going to have a party in Eretz Yisrael. Big event. Siyum HaShas. For the 4 that completed it. 2 young kids that completed the Shas of Mishnayot. Less money. It's only a couple of $3,000. But it's Mishnayot for, I think, 11, 12-year-old kid. Another one is 14-year-old kid. They finished the Shas Mishnayot. But then there's 2 other guys. 2 other guys that finish the Shas Bavli. Every day, they learn and learn and learn and learn, and they completed the entire Shas in 1 year. One of those is that 14-year-old kid who left the derech, hated the Torah, hated everything. But then, years passed, got an offer of a lifetime. $10,000 for you to finish the Shas. Why not? He tried it. He liked it. He did it. And in the process, he fell in love with the Torah. He fell in love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he couldn't stop himself from learning more. When he finished Masechet Shabbat, he was already a Shomer Shabbat. When each time he would learn another Masechet, he said, I have to do this now. This is serious stuff. I have to do this. And he'd learn more, and he'd do more. And he'd learn more, and he'd do more. And just last night, we got the call. I finished the Shas. Completely frum. Even his looks changed. And I'm not just meaning he grew a beard, like all... His looks, his appearance changed. You see how he's softened. And all he wants to do, he wants to learn Torah. He wants to work, he wants to do different things, but he wants to learn Torah every day. Bezat Hashem, in a few weeks, we're going to have a party for him and for the other 3 people, where you could see live how the Torah changes people when you toil. When you toil, when you sacrifice for it. When that wicked, disgusting excuse of a human being insulted that 14-year-old kid, thinking that he's doing somebody a favor, obviously it was the wrong place, it was the wrong time, it was the wrong approach, and it wasn't musar, it was simply abuse. Sometimes you have to tell people, listen, I got a candy for you, take it. Other times, you have to do it differently. Rabbi Yoel Misatmer said, how come when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to Am Yisrael, he would speak to them with words of rebuke. He would yell at them. He would tell them about Genom. The whole time that they were traveling from Egypt to Har Sinai, he taught them about Genom. 2-month shiur about Genom. For violating Shabbat, for going against Hashem. The entire Parashat Bechukotai, the entire Parashat Kitavo, worst punishments in the world, in this world. He would go off on them when he even thought that they were sinning, that they didn't kill the women because they wanted to go after women again, and he would just rip them apart when they went against Hashem. As he says in Parashat Ha'azinu, Am naval velo chacham, despicable, stupid nation. You're going against your Creator? gave them words of Musar that if you say it today, you get thrown out of the shul. Nobody would listen to you. But then, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, let me wipe them out, and I'll start a new nation, a greater nation from you, Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu cries to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says, kill me first. Don't kill a single Jew. Kill me first, wipe me from your book as if I never existed before you kill a single Jew. Time and time again, Moshe Rabbeinu would cry to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, tell him, don't touch them, don't hurt them. They're just little babies. They don't understand. They didn't mean it. This, that, fight for them. But when he came to them, ripped them apart. Says Rabbi Yoel Misatmer alav shalom. That's how you apply the teachings of the sages. When you're speaking to people in general, when you're giving a lecture, when you're talking in general, even if it applies to everybody in the crowd, even if it applies to only one person, but you're speaking in general and thereby nobody's going to feel like you're attacking them. You give them the truth, the full truth and nothing but the truth. And if that truth has to be painful, so be it. If that truth means you have to remind them of what's going to happen to them if they don't do tshuva, that's the best type of truth you can tell them. If that truth needs to be about emunah, then so be it. If that truth needs to be about hard stuff that's hard to hear, let it be. That's what you have to do. But when you're speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't complain about Am Yisrael. When you're speaking to a person one-on-one, be much more careful. Be much more sensitive. Don't start calling people, oh, you're a Rasha, you're a terrible person, you violate Shabbat. That's not going to help you. You could speak in general and let the person understand, do the calculation themselves. You could tell a person things that will encourage him. Sometimes the encouragement is fear. Sometimes the encouragement is all types of other things. But you have to know how to use those tools, not just with strangers, but with your own family. If you're going to have kids, you can't just yell at your kids and expect them to become better for it. The opposite. If you only yell at your kids, they'll eventually become numb to your yelling. And in fact, they'll just yell at you back. Don't do it! You don't do it! And that's what your 4-year-old's going to tell you. Why? Because all he ever heard from you is yelling. When was the last time you complimented him for saying the bracha in a nice way? When was the last time you complimented him for sitting quietly and reading a little book or looking like he's reading? When was the last time you complimented him for washing his hands? When was the last time you gave her a hug because she said a blessing or because she ate all of her food and she didn't waste? When was the last time you showed them that you love them without necessarily buying them something? When was the last time you showed them you love them because you bought them something, but something they wanted and not necessarily something that you wanted them to want? When was the last time you spent some time playing with them? When was the last time you told them how much you love them? When was the last time you explained to them why what they're doing is wrong, instead of simply yell at them? When was the last time? If you're only going to yell at your kids, whether those kids are your kids or they're your students, if you're only going to yell at them, it's not going to work. Eventually, they're going to run away from you, or they're simply going to become numb. They become numb. Everything is going to sound the same. The compliments and the yelling, it's all going to be the same. And your words are going to be in vain. So you have to know, Musar is not just yelling and screaming, it's not just bad. Sometimes you have to know who, what, when, and how, when to pull, when to push. Moshe Rabbeinu, the ultimate Musar teacher of all time, The Gemara says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he died, HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself cried. He says, who is going to rebuke my people like my Eved, like my servant Moshe? No one in history can ever rebuke Am Yisrael like Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu rebuked with full force. Who's going to do it like him? Nobody. But who loved Am Yisrael like Moshe Rabbeinu? Nobody. You see, Rabotai Yekarim, that's the key. If the rebuke that you're giving is coming out of a place of love because you care for that person, you're telling them that about Gehenom, you're telling them about Emunah, you're telling them about Kafakela, you're telling them about Bitachon, you're telling them about Shlom Bayit, you're telling them about loneliness, you're telling them about everything because you care about them, not you care about them liking you, them praising you, them agreeing with you. You don't care about any of that stuff. You simply care about them. When you do that and your words come from your heart, they'll reach their heart. But when you simply care about proving everybody that you're right and they're wrong, eventually you'll see that everything you've done has been one big failure. Why? Nothing will survive. Nothing will survive. And that's one of the great things that we learned from the Gaon of Vilna here, where he tells us, guide your sons and daughters with soft words, words of musar that will find a place in their heart. This, Rabotai, is critical advice for anybody that's giving chinuch. Now then the Gaon adds something else. Says, now that you know when to use fire and brimstone, you also have to know that there's different conditions in different places. Meaning, especially if we merit to arrive in Eretz Yisrael, because it's imperative that one follows the ways of Hashem there. Why is it different in Eretz Yisrael? Isn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu everywhere? Yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. But says the Ramban 800 years ago, on his commentary on Sefer Bereshit, chapter 19, verse 5, and he writes, if you notice, throughout the entire Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes from time to time different people. But the punishment that the people of Sodom received was unique. Why was it unique? They were punished, says the Ramban, much more severely than other sinners that we have in the Torah. They were completely annihilated, literally destroyed from the face of the earth. Unlike the generation of Noah, where pretty much the whole world was destroyed, after Hashem simply saw that there is a point of no return. At the time of Sodom and Gomorrah, there were many, many sinners all over the world, but Hashem only chose Sodom and Gomorrah to destroy it completely, to the point where there is a mark in the world that you can see the evidence of what happened a few thousand years ago. The Dead Sea, the lowest point on earth. You see a place where nothing grows. You see a place where it's clear that after you wake up from the beauty that's there, you realize that this place used to be much, much more beautiful. And this beauty that we see today is actually the destruction of what existed back then. And these people got annihilated. The Ramban says they got a punishment much more severe than other sinners, specifically because they sinned in the land of Israel. In Eretz Yisrael they sinned. And since the land is on a higher standing than any other place in the universe, it's in essence God's piece of land, that land cannot tolerate wicked behavior. The exalted status of Eretz Yisrael requires stricter judgment on those that live it, because it's Hashem's portion. And therefore the land would eventually vomit all of the inhabitants that are perverting the Torah. But when it came to the generation of Sodom and Gomorrah, they had to be destroyed, meaning it was even worse. Now, the Kolbo writes that while there are many benefits to relocating and making aliyah to living in Eretz Yisrael, as you see in Gemara Masechet Ketubot, page 110 and 111, discuss the different amazing things that are talked about in the Torah and about Eretz Yisrael. So surely there are special mitzvot that you can fulfill in Eretz Yisrael that you cannot do anything anywhere else. There's a specific kedusha in Eretz Yisrael that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. But a person should only make aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, says the Kolbo, on the condition that from the moment that they make aliyah, they conduct themselves to abstain from worldly pleasures and make sure to take care to fulfill all of the Torah and mitzvot, specifically with the ones that are associated with living in the Holy Land itself. Because Hashem's focus is on His land, and His providence is more pronounced there. And therefore a person that sins in the land of Israel will suffer much greater punishment than someone that sins elsewhere. There's simply no comparison between sinning in the king's palace versus sinning elsewhere. So the Kolbo gives us, and really anybody out there that wants to make aliyah or just made aliyah, a very serious word of advice. Because a lot of people say, yeah, Eretz Yisrael, it's a mitzvah to live there, it's this, it's that. But we already know that the Gdolei Ador that have discussed this topic, whether it's a Rav Auerbach or we discussed about a year ago, or others, they always say, make sure that you have certain things that are met as a result of you making aliyah. Number one, your Torah is not going to be hurt. Meaning, if your rabbi lives in America, don't make aliyah to Israel. Why? Because he's in America. Why are you leaving your rabbi to go to Israel? You're going to just give up your Torah? No, find a different rabbi. Then that means he wasn't your rabbi. If you could just give him away like he's just some hot potatoes, what kind of relationship is that? But if he's really your rabbi, he saved your neshama, he's the one that helped you, this and that, you don't leave your rabbi. That's number one. Even more so, you have a chavruta, you're learning well. You're going to go over there, who are you going to learn with? You're going to learn by yourself, you're going to find somebody new, so your Torah's going to get hurt. The yeshiva that you're attending here is good. Wherever you are, you're in South America, you're in Brazil, you're in Australia, you're in North America, wherever you are, you're going to a good yeshiva. Over there, they may not even accept you. They may not. You may not be in such a high level. Why are you going? Your kids are not going to be in such a high level like they are. They're not going to succeed as much. Why? If they're going to be at the same or better Torah levels, if you're going to be at the same or better Torah learning in Eretz Yisrael, that means condition number one was met. Good. Check mark. If you're going to learn more Torah in Eretz Yisrael, if you're closer to your rabbi, to your chavruta in Eretz Yisrael, your kids are going to go to better schools, or at the very least the same quality of Torah in Eretz Yisrael as where you have wherever you are, then you have a check mark to make aliyah on first condition. Not check mark on everything yet. First condition is met. But if one of those things is going to get hurt, you're not going to learn as much, your wife is not going to become as religious, your kids are not going to go to the same type of quality schools, already there's no bother of looking at any other conditions. Do not make aliyah. If your Torah is going to get hurt, do not make aliyah. Do not make aliyah. Why? Sinning in Eretz Yisrael will bring you a much, much worse life, both in this world and eternity. Second condition. Shlom Bayit. Do not fight and break up a marriage as a result of you wanting to make aliyah. Surely, not everybody's always on the same page. Sometimes she wants to make aliyah and he doesn't, or he's not so sure. Sometimes he does and she's not so sure. Sure, that's normal. But don't get to a point of, listen, I'm divorcing you and I'm going over there. Or like somebody did one time, she thought that she's making a mitzvah. What did she do? She said, listen, I'm making aliyah. Husband and kids said, listen, we don't want to make aliyah. We like it over here. She said, yeah, but I want to go over there. And she said, listen, we don't want to go. We have a job here. We have a family here. We're not doing it. She said, no, I'm going to go. She asked me. I told her, don't make aliyah. Don't make aliyah. Why? You can't abandon your family. You're the mother of the house. No, but I heard some rabbi said it's a big mitzvah. Yeah, it's a big mitzvah if you don't abandon your whole family. Not it's a big mitzvah just to go there and abandon everybody. No, I'm just going to go and eventually they're going to come. What she did, she left everybody. She went up to Eretz Yisrael and guess what? Nobody came. Nobody came. And the whole family was broken and tragedy followed. Tragedy followed, Hashem Yachem. So you have to make sure that you're on the same page. Get on the same page. Be patient. Encourage each other to go. Make sure that if one of you is not so sure about going, make sure that you are patient with them and you try to meet whatever issues there are and try to help them get to the right understanding. Because again, if you have Shlom Bayit, you have a check mark. No Shlom Bayit, it's going to lead to a divorce, it's going to lead up to a broken family. No check mark, no aliyah. So let's say you're going to have as much or more Torah in Eretz Yisrael, and you're going to have Shlom Bayit in Eretz Yisrael. Good. You have 2 check marks. Check mark number 3, Parnasah. Parnasah, you have to have a way to make a living. If you're doing fine wherever you are, and you're going to go to Eretz Yisrael to be mekabetz nedavot, you're going to start having to be one of these homeless people looking for tzedakah so you can continue living in Eretz Yisrael. Do not make aliyah. If you can't get a job to make a living, if you can't sustain yourself living over there, don't make aliyah. Don't make aliyah. But if you have a way to make a living, whether it's because you've saved up some money or you're able to start a new thing over there or get a job, whatever it is, you can have parnasah. Then, Bezrat Hashem, you can make aliyah. So we'll say, yeah, listen, you have to have emunah. Okay, great, you have to have emunah. It's easy for you to say if you're already over there and you've already passed the test, or perhaps you're not doing it. And it's easy for you to tell other people, have emunah, have emunah. Telling people have emunah is only to tell yourself to have emunah, or if you're teaching in general. But to go yell at people saying, no, you should go, you should have emunah, that's not exactly the best thing. Why? Because again, everybody has to know where they stand. You can't tell people to have something that you don't know what it is. So you have to also follow Dat Torah. Dat Torah means that you have to make sure that you have something prepared. Why? Because if you are not, you're going to move your whole family to Eretz Yisrael, and you don't have any way to make a living, and you only have enough money to survive for 1 or 2 months, what's going to happen? That money problems could lead to marriage problems. Those marriage problems could also lead to Torah problems. So the whole thing could fail. So you have to make sure that you know where you're doing. If you are going to move there, you have to make sure you have enough money to survive for a little while, that you're going to be able to live there without necessarily being pressured that if you don't get a job within a month or 2, that's it, you're going to be homeless. You have to have a little bit of cushion. You have to have a little bit of preparation if you don't have the cushion. Meaning you have to get the job before you move there or something. You have to do something in order to make sure that money does not become the Satan's tool to simply destroy you. So now when a person follows Da'at Torah, they know that if they're going to move to Eretz Yisrael, that means, or they're going to live in Eretz Yisrael in general, that means that their responsibility to their Creator, to their King of Kings, is even higher than it is anywhere else. Why? Because they're literally inside the King's palace. This, by the way, is in the Sefer Maaseh Ish, which is the biography of the Chazon Ish. It says that the Chazon Ish never moved to Yerushalayim. He never moved to Yerushalayim. Why he never moved to Yerushalayim? He said the following, the Chazon Ish himself, Kodesh Kodashim, we're learning his Sefer every Sunday together. And this is what he says. He says, even though he was offered many times to move to Yerushalayim and so on, Chazon Ish says Yerushalayim is the king's palace itself. It's in close proximity to the place of the Beit HaMikdash and the Kodesh Kodashim. This places a great obligation with regards to a person's behavior. And the Chazon Ish, the Gedol Ador, was scared that he is not going to be able to meet the demands of a Kadosh Baruch Hu if he lives in Yerushalayim. Now, obviously, from our perspective, if he can't meet a Kadosh Baruch Hu's demands, who can? But the reality is, the more a person knows Torah, the more a person knows the will of Hashem, the more a person knows the responsibility that a Kadosh Baruch Hu puts in each and every one of our hands, the more they're scared of not meeting the king's demands. Scared of losing that connection, scared of disappointing the king, scared of Chas v'Shalom, the punishment. And Rabotai Karim, when a person simply operates their life without a care in the world, that's a person that's simply considered a fool and is going to have a road full of tragedy. Oh, why is Hashem doing it to me? Hashem didn't do it to you. You did it to yourself. You're not thinking, you're not asking, you're not doing, you're just doing. You're just acting on impulse. Never a good thing. Now, what if a person wants to, okay, fine, I get it. I need to fix the way I communicate with my family, the way I communicate with my husband, the way I communicate with my wife, the way I communicate with my kids. I want to get everybody on the same page. Maybe I want to make an aliyah. Maybe I want to go this. Maybe I want to do that. Okay, what now? Continues the Gaon of Vilna to his wife and says the following. Therefore, train them well. Since perfection of one's speech and character traits needs to be something in which one becomes greatly accustomed to. They need to get used to it. And being greatly accustomed to proper behavior is superior to all means of training. All beginnings are hard. Afterwards, it will be good that he accustom himself in perfecting his speech. And when he goes on his way, then he boasts. It's a quote from Mishlei, chapter 20, verse 14. So, the Gaon of Vilna gives us a hand that perhaps in the politically correct world today may be rejected because people think too highly of themselves and they want to be spoken in a certain way, they want to be nurtured, they want to be held, and they even want Hashem to need them. Not that they need Hashem. They want Hashem to need them. They want Hashem to fulfill their requests and so on and so forth. The Gaon of Vilna says, if you want your kids, yourself, whoever you want to change, you have to train them. Meaning that the average person says, what do you mean? What, is my kid a dog? Is my husband a dog? My wife a dog? I have to train them? No, they're not a dog, but they still need training. In so many words, it's not going to happen in one night. It's not going to happen after one conversation. As much as we would love to say, listen, I inspired this guy after one conversation, his whole life changed. It doesn't work that way. Most of those people that watch a lecture, a video, or something, and they get inspired, that inspiration is just enough for them to take action in order to get further inspiration. It's not enough to keep them inspired permanently. This also answers the question for anybody that has of how come Hashem made so many open miracles at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu and he doesn't make so many open miracles today. First and foremost, the fact that you don't know what a miracle looks like is part of the reason of why Hashem is not making miracles, meaning that he is making open miracles. You're just not viewing them as open miracles. You're viewing them as natural or as unnatural or happenstance of some kind. You don't view rain as a miracle, even though it's an endless amount of drops of water that drop from the sky and not a single drop hits another drop. I mean, just try yourself. Take anything. Take a whole basket of marbles, and throw it from 2 stories to some ground. Make sure nobody's below, and you'll see that it's some of those stones are going to hit each other. Some of those it's not going to be so perfect. They're not all going to be aligned, but yet you have drops of water that drop all the way from the sky, an endless amount of them, one after another, and no 2 drops hit each other. Because if 2 hit each other, that means 3 would hit each other, and 4 would hit each other, and before you know it, it would become a puddle, and that puddle can drop on somebody and kill him. So Kadosh Baruch Hu made sure that no 2 drops of rain will ever hit each other. Do you see that as a miracle? Maybe now you identify it a little bit more, but that's just enough until you forget about it. The fact that the world needs water to survive, and that's the one thing we have a surplus in the world. The fact that you have certain things in nature that literally make this the only place where we could live on the entire universe. The distance from the sun, the oxygen levels, and so on and so forth. People don't see that as supernatural. People don't see that as miraculous. Even the fact that you have literally people like business. If you go here in in New York City, for example, New York City is very everybody's on top of each other. And there's literally houses and businesses all in the same building, and everybody's on top of each other, and there's literally an endless amount of restaurants. So much so that if you go to a restaurant, assuming you're not Jewish, you don't have to eat kosher, and you go and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at a different restaurant every single day, you're still not going to hit every restaurant in New York City, and that's just Manhattan. And if you calculate Brooklyn and the Bronx, the 5 boroughs, you're never going to, even if you do every breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a few years, you're never going to go to every single place. And yet, you have not just the restaurants, you have all these other types of businesses, the laundromats and this and that, and all types of retail stores, and professionals, and lawyers, and doctors, and dentists, and this and that, and all types of professionals, and everybody has a living. And on top of the fact, even though there's 20 million people in a relatively small place, not only does everybody have a living, but many of them have a lot more than they even need. That's miraculous? Well, you know what? In my opinion, it's not as miraculous as living in the rest of the country. That's not like New York. Most of the country, most of America is not like New York. Most of the world is not like New York. New York, Los Angeles, these cities are unique. But if you go to places like Florida, not Miami, but the rest of Florida, if you go to places like Texas, you go to places that are where you have a lot of land, you'll see that in places like here, you don't have this, everybody's on top of each other, but rather you have, when it comes to businesses and houses, there's, sections for everything. Housing, there's a certain section, there's a neighborhood, there's a community, and then as far as the businesses, there's a shopping center. A shopping center where it has X amount of businesses. Now, if you're a new person, and you drive around and you see all these shopping centers, and you see this shopping center has, 100 stores. That shopping center has 200 stores. That shopping center has 300 stores. And most of the time you pass by them and you see there's almost no cars. If it wasn't for the employees, you don't even know if there would be cars at all. You see that most of these shopping centers don't have any cars. And I'm not talking about because it's Corona. It's always like this. Most shopping centers are empty most of the time. But yet they're still there month after month for years. Meaning that they're still able to make enough money to not only pay the rent, but on top of it, to make a living, to pay employees. And you barely ever see, so many customers. Like you would think a place like this that requires $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a month in rent literally needs to have a line of people every single day just to make ends meet. But it's not like that. It's not like that. In fact, most of the time, these shopping centers are empty, and there's just a few cars here and there, and there's a customer here and there. And anyone that has been in retail, knows a little bit about business, understands what I'm talking about when I say that's miraculous. It's miraculous how a Kadosh Baruch Hu sends parnasah to every one of those little businesses that has these little retail stores. And now even more so, you have all of these places that are businesses that don't even have a retail. They only have a online presence. Pretty much they have a warehouse and they work out of some office or some house or wherever it is. And they literally are making, money that way. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends them parnasah that way through the internet, through friends and family, through this, through that. And Hashem feeds all of His creation. All of His creation. All of these people that have these businesses, all of these employees that need jobs, all of these people that need food, all of these creatures, these bugs, these animals, these birds, everything gets parnasah. Everything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu poteach et yadecha u'masbiah lekol chai ratzon. He opens His hand and He feeds all those that need it. That's miraculous. But your average person doesn't view that as miraculous. Why? They want split the sea. They want some type of voice coming out of heaven. So, first and foremost, before we answer the question of why doesn't Hashem make the miracles today like He did in the past, it's not exactly such a legitimate question. Why? Because in reality, there are plenty of miracles. There are plenty of miracles that we don't identify as miracles. Plenty of miracles that are literally unbelievable. Just think of it this way. Yesterday or the day before, the world was shocked. Facebook and all of its entities were shut down for something like half the day, 8-10 hours or whatever it was. Now many people say, Facebook, I don't even use Facebook, who cares? Yeah, but most people were affected by it in some way or another. Why? Almost half the human population uses one of their services. If it's not Facebook that they're on a regular basis and they're operating either their friendships or their business or both, they're using WhatsApp or they're using Instagram or they're using one of the other services that Facebook has. So literally yesterday for 8 or 10 hours, a bunch of people, myself included, were scratching their head. Oh, wow, I have all this free time that I usually do business to help people answering questions on WhatsApp or to do all types of other projects, and now I don't even have the service available. What am I going to do with this time? Like, you're scratching your head, like, what's going on? And then you think, wait a minute, what did I just have? Oh, I had the ability to talk to my employee in India in live through this just a moment ago when it was working. I had an opportunity to talk to my other employee in Israel live. I didn't have to travel on a plane to go talk to him. I didn't have to write a letter. I didn't have to, even send an email. I could talk to them live, discuss things in real time just a moment ago. And I don't have that anymore. And literally, you realize, what don't I have anymore? I was able to reach tens of thousands of people live at any given moment by sending one post on the Facebook page or this or that. And now it's not available anymore. You start realizing that's miraculous. That a Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you the ability to reach an endless amount of people in real time. In real time, no matter where you are in the world. You don't see that as a miracle, but it is miraculous. If you asked the Ramban about it 800 years ago, do you think such a thing will be miraculous? He'll tell you, of course, it's greater than Kriyat Yam Suf. He'll tell you that you can talk to anybody you want in real time, no matter where they are in the world. That's miraculous. But your average person today does not view that as miraculous, doesn't view the phone as miraculous, doesn't view text messaging as miraculous, doesn't view internet as miraculous. They view it as like, oh, this is the world. So in reality, a lot of the things that are miraculous that are happening, we've become so accustomed to them, we forgot who's doing it. We forgot that Hashem is doing it. In fact, sometimes we'll contribute the responsibility to people. And that's the foolishness among us. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making an endless amount of miracles, but we don't identify them as miracles. And even the other bigger miracles that a lot of people want to happen, some of them do happen also. You're just not necessarily on such a large scale. Why is it not on such a large scale? Because number one, as we could already see from the examples we've given, most people don't appreciate miracles for what they are. And number two, miracles do not make people do tshuva permanently. Miracles, to go back to our original point, in case you forgot, only provide the initial inspiration. That's just enough to get you motivated to the next bit of inspiration that's going to keep you motivated. That's what a miracle is good for. You have a near-death experience. Hashem just saved your life. You just had a miraculous find. You just had a miraculous save, a miraculous deal, a miraculous this, a miraculous that. That bit of inspiration, that new insight that you got, that divine providence that you have, that's not going to change you permanently. The near-death experience of Rabbi Yaron Reuven or any of the other people that have had extraordinary stories, although that's the story that everybody knows, if you ask them personally, was that the reason why you are who you are? They'll tell you absolutely not. It inspired me to get started, and in some cases, it took a while even for that inspiration to work, but that's not the reason why I changed my whole life, became religious. Same thing with my personal story. That sickness, that cure, it was an inspiration, a difficult one nonetheless, but that wasn't it. That was the spark. What got you to change is the change. Meaning that you got inspired to do something about something. To do something about it. And you did, unlike most people. You listened to the message from above, and you did something about it. And after you did something about it, and you learned more about Hashem, and you did another mitzvah, Hashem gave you another mitzvah opportunity. And you said, you know what? Let me do another one. And you learned a little bit more, and you did a little bit more. And one mitzvah led to another, and one mitzvah led to another, and you decided, hey, listen, I'm going for this. I'm going for this. Yeah, but you know that it's not going to be easy. That's fine. I'm going for it. And that's one of the things that a lot of people simply do not understand. Where they think that once you get that break, everything is supposed to be easy. And that's one of the Satan's greatest tools to fool people, to make them think that serving Hashem is supposed to be easy. A certain Rosh Yeshiva of a seminary, actually, came to Rav Steinemann and said, Kvod Rav, have many hundreds of girls studying at our seminary. I want the Rav to give me a blessing. Rav Steinemann gives him a blessing. May you have nachat from your children and from those that are like your children. And the Rosh Yeshiva says to him, and Kvod Rav, please give me a blessing that it will be easy. Rav Steinemann looks at the Rosh Yeshiva and says to him, there is no such thing. There is no such thing as easy. No such thing as easy. It's an illusion. There is no such thing as relax and enjoy. There is no such thing as you're going to have an easy, enjoyable life and everything is just simply going to work out. It does not exist. But surely the Satan will make you believe it does. Surely the Satan will make you believe that some people even have it and you can get it too if you just had the money, if you just had that job, if you just had that spouse, if you just had that kid, if you just had that house, if you just had this one more thing, then you would have it. And guess what? Even if you get it, you still don't have it. And most of the times, it's just like the donkey that's chasing the carrot that's tied to a string. You're just chasing in vain. Why? Because easy doesn't exist, but the Satan will make you think that it does. You see, Rabotai Kareem, one of the great lessons that the Gaon of Vilna is trying to teach us here is that if you want to become better, a better parent, a better child, a better spouse, a better Jew, a better person, you have to train yourself, and needless to say, you have to train others. Train your children, meaning that it's a ongoing process. It's not a one-time thing. Don't expect it to be a one-time thing. Those one-time inspirations, that movie Hashem took back his millions, that movie Tikkun Abrit, that movie Chibut HaKever, those other movies that are coming out, the movies we have in Hebrew, the Rabbi Akiva movie, the Emunah movie, all these other movies, those are meant to be that spark, that inspiration. This lecture, that lecture, all the lectures, they are meant to be an inspiration for some people, and as a first time, and a second inspiration, or a third inspiration, or an ongoing inspiration for others. But in themselves, they're not enough to keep you going forever. They're enough to get you to the next point. The best book in the world, the 5 books of Moses. If you read it once, that'll inspire you. But if you don't read it again after that, that inspiration will go away. And unless you do something about it, that inspiration is never coming back. You see, Rabotai, people expect their kids to change overnight. They expect their spouse to change overnight. They expect the broken relationships to be fixed overnight. It doesn't work that way. It's an illusion of the Satan. The Satan tries to make you believe, and unfortunately he gets an endless amount of people to believe that change is supposed to happen suddenly, but not just change, permanent change. The Gaon of Vilna says you have to train them, because perfection of one's speech and character traits needs to be something in which one becomes greatly accustomed to. And being accustomed to proper behavior is superior to all training, to all means of training. That first and foremost, you have to know. You have to train him. It's an ongoing thing. Why? Because in order for something to be a permanent change, it has to be ongoing change, ongoing training. Ongoing training, not a one-time thing. An ongoing conversation with your child, an ongoing relationship with your spouse, an ongoing relationship and a conversation with your students, your employees, your boss, your customers. It's an ongoing thing. It's not just a one-time thing. The more you want change, the more of a commitment you have to make. Needless to say, if that changes yourself, if you want yourself to change, you want your life to change, you have to change. Don't expect change without changing. Oh, my life is miserable. Okay, you have to do tshuva, you have to change. Oh, why can't the change happen by itself? It doesn't work that way. It simply doesn't. If you just look at the wall, is the wall going to change? No. So why should your life change if you're acting like a wall? People expect everything to change, their world around them to change while they stay the same. And that all comes from, number one, ego, a God complex where you think that the world is revolved around you. And number two, it's spiritual laziness. But a person needs to know that you have to get yourself and those that are under your supervision, under your responsibility, accustomed to being trained, accustomed to a constant progress that at times is small, at times is big, but nonetheless is constant. And it's constant effort. A constant effort. Sometimes progress is a step back, by the way, because that step back is the right step, and yet thereby it's still progress. People think that just moving forward is progress. Technically, yes, but in reality it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes walking away from something is the greatest progress you can make. So when you're going to have students or children or different relationships, you have to know that you have to train them. And of course, this means we have to train ourselves. Because character traits are something that are only changed after it becomes a habit. You become accustomed to it. Meaning that the person that, let's say, has bad habits doesn't necessarily view them as bad, and even when you tell them it's bad, doesn't understand how bad it is. But the Shla Kadosh writes that there was a certain tzaddik that trained his son with midat haemet, to always say the truth, always speak the truth, always go towards the truth, so much so that even if you would have paid this kid all the treasures in the world, he wouldn't have taken it if it meant that he would have to change the truth and not stick to it. And the Shla Kadosh says that anyone who's raised in a community where that community is careless about certain holy things, certain laws of the Torah, laws of Shabbat, let's say they carry in a neighborhood even though there's no Eruv, or they have an Eruv but nobody really checks it, or they modesty is not necessarily such an important topic, you'll see that in such a community, the fruits that come out of that community, the children that come out of that community, will end up violating much, much worse than their parents did, and much more than their parents did. Why? Because even if those kids will still stay connected somewhat to keeping, let's say, Shabbat, because they saw that their parents, sometimes were not so careful about specific things in Shabbat, they themselves already got to a point where they completely disregarded, because they said if my parents weren't so careful about it, they already made it their habit to not necessarily take it into account and really care for it altogether. And you see actually in communities, I've seen it with my own eyes, where the parents are not so careful about their Shabbat observance, the following generation completely desecrates Shabbat altogether. In communities where the parents are not exactly so modest, you see, I'm not even talking about they're walking around immodest. I'm talking about they're not modest enough, where the skirt is like barely meeting the bottom of the knee. It's almost like she's doing you a favor that her skirt is long enough. Her daughter most likely is going to walk around with no aglaim, no yadayim, no legs, no arms, meaning not covering anything. Why? It's just a reality. Her wig is a little long. Her daughter most likely won't even cover her hair altogether, and if she does, she'll cover it with something that's even worse than her hair. He wasn't so careful with honesty, paying his employees on time. His son may very well be an outright thief, may make all types of fraudulent transactions. It's just a reality. And that's what the Shla Kadosh is saying. Why? You trained them. You trained them for bad things. You made those small things that for you were a bad habit. But for your kid, the fruits that came out of your community, the fruits that came out of your own house, they're much, much worse. Much, much worse than you are. Now there was a story that Rabbi again said. There was one time, actually Rabbi Ephraim told me this story, that there was one father that had a policy in his house. The truth deserves a reward. What does that mean, truth deserves a reward? And of course, you have a house, and that house has kids. That means that house is going to be balagan. If you have kids, balagan. Balagan means it's going to be a mess. Sometimes there is things that are broken, a mess, fighting, arguing, crying, screaming. That's a house with kids. If your house is quiet, either it's a morgue or it has no kids. If you have kids, There's going to be noise, crying, fighting, this, that, just the way it is. And your kids are the greatest in the world. You have kids, that's what happens. That's what happens. So of course, sometimes the kids are going to fight. Sometimes somebody's going to get in trouble, do the wrong thing. So this father, smart, Talmid Chacham, told his kids, make sure you always tell me the truth. And if you tell me the truth, even if you did something wrong, I'll give you a present for it. I'll give you a reward for it. So what was his policy? Anytime something bad happened, somebody broke something, something's missing, of course, none of the kids want to admit who did it. You don't want to tell on each other, but at the same token, you don't want to be blamed for it. The father would say, who did it? The kid that admitted said, I did it, Abba. He broke it. He did it. He made the trouble. Now you would think, oh, that kid's going to get punished. No. Here you go. You get a reward. You get a reward. Why? You told the truth. You told the truth. But if you deny or lie, which in essence is almost the same thing, and I find out, then you'll get severely punished. If you tell the truth, you get rewarded, even though the truth sometimes is not what you want to hear. You rather hear good news, but if it's the truth, it is good news. Even if it's bad news, it's good news. So this father trained his kids to always tell the truth. And when those kids grew up, saying the truth simply became natural to them. Saying the truth simply became natural to them, even if that truth wasn't necessarily the ideal. When a person thinks about what possible circumstance will come out of it, they knew already from their father, the truth is always better. It's always better. Now, the Chachamim talk about how a person needs to work on themselves a lot. The Gaon of Vilna takes it a step further. And this is one of the places where the Gaon of Vilna says that working on your character traits is not just a big deal. It's your whole purpose. So much so that when one of his Talmidim asked him, Kvod Harav, if working on your character traits is so important, why isn't it one of the 613 mitzvot? The Gaon said, because the whole purpose of all of the mitzvot is for you to use them to perfect yourself as a person. Meaning that perfecting yourself as a person, getting rid of those bad traits that you have. It's not, if a person is prone to lying, if a person is too gullible, the opposite. If a person is a thief, if a person is a liar, if a person is arrogant, if a person is a angry person, stingy person, and so on and so forth. Everybody knows different traits that they have. If they're very promiscuous, if they're flirtatious, all of these different things, people understand that this is not normal, this is not good at the very least. Maybe normal in a horrific society you may live in, but nonetheless, it's not the right thing to do. So the Gaon of Vilna says, fixing those traits, fixing that arrogance, that stinginess, that anger, those bad traits that you have, that is your purpose in life. That is your ultimate purpose in life. That is what you need to constantly train on yourself. That's what you need to work on with your children, with your spouse. That's your ultimate purpose in life. Now, sometimes a person will watch a lecture, will hear a lecture, will get inspired by some type of event and lose that inspiration. Why do they lose it? Many times they have an inner Amalek. They have an inner enemy that's trying to kill them. What is that inner enemy? Because to get a person inspired in the first place, for anyone that's in the business of helping people get closer to Hashem, whether you're doing it professionally or you're doing it just to do chesed and to help people and so on, it's not easy to get people inspired. Even if all it requires from you every day is to press a button and to send lectures to people, even that requires time and effort and so on. So the key is to finally get somebody on board is tough. It's tough. So finally, when you got somebody inspired, just to see them lose steam right away is very discouraging. Why does this happen? Rav Chaim Shmuelevitz, Alav Shalom, says that in his Sichot Musar, in Parashat Achrei Mot, Ma'amar 66, he says that the biggest Amalek a person can have is bad habits. In his words, he says, being accustomed to incorrect behavior is the greatest enemy of motivation to uplift yourself to a loftier plane. Where at a time where a person is finally encouraged to change for the better, even as he feels a spark of inspiration that is elevating his aspirations, his customary behavior patterns will extinguish that spark quickly. In so many words, that bad trait that you've ignored your whole life and not thought it's a big deal, don't think you need to overcome it, that in itself can be the biggest Amalek from further growth. Example, someone that has anger problems, where they're prone to anger, they're quick to anger, and they don't let go, and they keep anger for a while, and so on and so forth. It's not a good thing. Now that anger, you may say, oh, listen, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. I remember myself, I used to say, listen, what do you mean? Anger, it's big deal, no big deal. I was born this way. I didn't even think you could change it. But nonetheless, this is something you can change, but it takes a lot of effort, and it's an endless effort, and it never, ever is easy. But if a person simply just gives up on it, guess what? It not only gets worse, but the circumstances repeat themselves, and the opportunities that you lose get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Because as you go through life, different opportunities are presented to you, different things are on the line, and that bad habit that you have ends up costing you more and more. And what ends up happening is that when a person ignores that bad habit, where initially, he was angry, he was a teenager, and because of that, he got into a fight with somebody. Okay, she doesn't think it's a big deal. Okay, I'll say I'm sorry tomorrow. And then the next thing you know, he got into another argument with somebody, and he ended up losing a friend. Okay, fine, I'll find another friend. And then he gets into another situation, expresses anger, and he ends up not getting the job that he wanted. And then he ends up getting fired. And then he ends up losing a shidduch. And then he ends up losing a job. And then he ends up losing a marriage. And he could lose a relationship with one of his children, and so on and so forth. Meaning that bad trait costs you more and more and more and more in perpetuity. And that's just in this world. And one of the things that you don't even realize that it's costing you is that it's costing you growth. It's costing you tshuva. It's costing you getting out of the hole that you're in. Why? Because sometimes you finally get inspired. You finally get inspired to change. You know what? I'm going to do tshuva. I'm going to get closer to Hashem. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And you're inspired to do something. And one day that rabbi that inspired you to do something, he says something you don't like. He's in favor of something you're not. He says something that's the opposite of what you thought. He talks to you in a certain way that you just can't accept and tolerate. Whether it's because he meant it a certain way and you misunderstood, or because he was this, or because he was that, but either way, it got you ticked off. You are angry. And you decide, you know what? The hell with him. I'm never listening to him again. That's it. Delete. Throw out all the CDs, the USBs. Delete the channel. Never pick up the phone. Never this, never that. The end. End of relationship. Why? He angered me. And guess what? You just lost your ticket to tshuva, to olam haba, to getting out of this hole that you're in and can't get yourself out. Why? because of that one bad habit that you have, because of that one bad habit. And that's what the Rav Chaim Shmuelevitz is saying. That one bad habit could literally cost a person such a great fortune. Such a great fortune. It's literally unquantifiable. And if a person does not realize that they have to fix themselves, because changing your traits is your life's purpose, maybe the acknowledgement that your loss from these bad habits is so great, maybe that will encourage you to start changing. Because when a person makes a good thing a habit, something that they do good, saying thank you, saying hello, being grateful, appreciating things in general, looking at things from a positive perspective, being very kind to people, kind with words, kind with money, kind with your time, thinking about things, being patient, looking for opportunities to do mitzvot and chesed, all types of great things that a person can make a habit in their life. Those things, Rabotai, can be a spark that gets you back in. That gets you back in to build more. But if your spark of bad habits is bigger, it's shinier, it can even destroy the good things that you do. Even that kindness that you give can be thrown in the garbage because of that anger that you express. Even that gratitude that you have can be misunderstood and completely ignored because of that anger that you have, or whatever other thing. So a person needs to know that, yes, making good things a habit is good, and make as many good things a habit as possible. But don't think for a moment that that is enough. You have to get rid of the bad habits. How do you get rid of the bad habits? You have to train yourself. Which means, if it's so hard for you to get rid of this bad habit because it requires constant training, constant thinking, constant praying, constant crying, constant thinking, constant meditating, constant crying again, constant pleading, constant learning, constant. So it's a lot, right? Why are you so hard on your kid or your wife or your husband when they're not able to change right away? If you know it's so hard for you to change, don't be so hard on them when they're not able to change their bad habits just like that. Give them time. Be patient. And that, Rabotai, is why the Gaon of Vilna is in essence telling us, teach them, train them, perfect them, do. But in reality, it's all for us. It's all for us. It's all for us. Train ourselves. Teach ourselves. Why? The better we become, the better the world around us becomes. Because we will become better parents, and we will become better people, and we will become better servants of Hashem, and we will become better. And when we're better, we can help people become better, especially those that we spend and invest the most amount in. Be'ezrat Hashem, each and every single one of us starts to make ourselves better. And that in itself will make the world around us better. Thank you for learning with me another few lines from this extraordinary letter from the Gaon of Vilna. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of you with an extraordinary year full of development, full of success, parnasa tova, chaim arukim, shlemim, meleim Torah, mitzvot, gmilut chasadim. May each and every single one of you get to extraordinarily higher levels in your avodat Hashem. May you be able to have all the good things that you want to do fulfilled and executed and achieved. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu make you a vessel to publicize His Torah one way or the other this year, B'ezrat Hashem, you and your whole family. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.
אני מברך את הרבנים, רגע. אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בישועות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל אשר יפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, רדינו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.
בעזרת השם רשת בכל הארץ. הוא היהודי הזה, הוא היה מיליונר, סגר את כל הביזנס, אמר אני משקיע פה בעולמה של תורה.
איפה הוא גר?
בפלורידה.
פלורידה, איפה זה פלורידה? באמריקה.
מיאמי. כן, ליד. אנחנו שם עכשיו הולכים להקים קהילה ספרדית.
חזק אותו בשמי.
קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
תעבירו מה שבירכתי אותו.
כן, קהילה ספרדית גדולה.